All right, now we're driving into a topic that's on the minds of many across the nation, and that's surviving the high cost of living as inflation and rising prices continue to impact daily lives. Many are finding themselves stretched thin, trying to make ends meet while maintaining a decent quality of life. Well, joining us to discuss how to navigate this, we have Oladele, founder, the Money With Club, joining me via Zoom. Great to have you on the show.
Hi, Laddie. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So I guess consumers, workers are having to deal with a lot right now in Nigeria. We see how the economic headwinds are blowing hard. For salary earners, if you earned about 350,000 naira, say 3 or 4 years ago, your salary was equivalent to about $1,000. Now that 350,000 naira is about $218, and wage growth seems non-existent. How can such a person at a time like this manage? We see fuel selling at between 900 to 1,100 naira, depending on where you're buying fuel from. And we know how much fuel was about 5 years ago.
Yes, I know it's a really tough situation and everyone is affected or impacted by it. Even those who thought they were in a good space. The reality is that somehow or the other, when you compare what you're earning right now in dollar terms, everyone is taking a hit. However, in terms of balancing finances, it's one of those things where you have to adjust to what is happening in the reality on ground. What we have seen is that a lot of people are spending more and more on consumption, on food, because that is the basic. Now, if you are not aware or if you are not thinking about it ahead, you might fall into the bucket of people thinking all is normal. Right? So the first thing is that you need to adjust. The reality is that prices have significantly spiked everywhere, and it's a global thing. What is happening in Nigeria is not unique to Nigeria. It's just that our situation is more escalated than others. However, what I would say is the first thing that everyone needs to readjust. You need to look at the things that are your needs, focus on them before you start going to the excesses or the things you normally do to make yourself happy.
So I guess throw away wants at this point. You see the data up there about, we've seen the fuel price per liter, that's up about 500% in, say, 4 to 5 years. And, you did mention, adjustments at this point, and I'm sure some people are already making major adjustments. You did say now you focus on needs. And not wants. But do you think we need to get maybe 4 to 5 jobs at this point to stay afloat?
So maybe yes. But the thing about it, right, is that the economy has also changed. 5 years ago, it was tough for you to have a job and have some kind of online gig that is running. Right? So there's also a change in the structure of the economy, which you might be able to take advantage of depending on the amount of time you have to commit to your current role. Even things like writing and getting paid for it at the weekend, or managing an account for someone that you have to just pop in every 30 minutes once a day. So there is a case for having more than one job. However, you have to balance it so you don't get thrown out of all the jobs because you're not delivering on any. But yes, if you can, get as many jobs as possible.
Yeah, as many jobs as possible. And I guess it will be easy, spreading yourself so thin at this point. But let's look at another issue now. We see parents now have to deal with back to school expenses. We're seeing fuel prices, that's up. So I'm sure the schools will now be saying, for school bus, we might have to increase what you've been paying, because now we've seen the price of fuel and you might not even be able to get fuel at this point. What do you think parents should be doing at this time?
So the first thing I would say is focus on the most important thing, pay school fees first. At least get that box ticked. And even in that, right, reassess it. Is there a school that you can pay less for the same value? If you can, then make that move. And a lot of parents have had to make that decision. Why? Because you don't want to get to a point where you are unable to actually pay the bills, the actual school fees, which is the most important thing. Then after you've paid the school fees, then you start looking at the next important thing. For some people, school bus is very important because there's no way to get their kids back home or to school based on the way their work structure is. If school bus is too expensive, you might consider carpooling with other parents. You have to start getting creative because I understand from the perspective of the school that they have to increase the prices. But when the cost of school bus is almost getting to the cost of school fees, then you might need to rethink it. So I think the major thing at this point is not just heading into expenses. It's actually writing them down and saying which one is the most important thing. Start with that, make sure that is covered, and then begin to go down the line to what you can afford. We really don't want to be borrowing to pay for school bus. It's a bad deal, right? So you have to actually sit down and think of what can you do at this time? What can you afford? Can you afford to change schools? Can you step down the school fees to a smaller school? If you can, please go for it.
Right, and you did mention taking loans to pay school fees. We know a couple of people like to get loans from the loan apps. They're easily accessible, but those rates can be really tempting.
Yes. So the thing about it, I realized that people don't actually look at the number. So someone tells you 2.5% monthly, but you don't realize in a year that's almost 30%. But if they tell you that on 100,000 you're going to be paying 5,000 every day, you will actually understand the weight of it, the actual interest expense. So when you see these rates, before you jump at it and say, oh, 2% is low compared to what's happening outside, ask them for the actual numbers so you know. And then what it means is that apart from the fact that you can't afford this thing right now, you're going to have an additional obligation to pay on top of what you already cannot afford. So tread slowly when you're going into loans.
Right. And talking about loans, we also have some pay small services. Do you think companies should start exploring that more, especially for things that cost a lot?
Yes. I would say explore it, but explore it with some skill. You have to decide on what you are going to use that loan for. What do I mean? If I need to buy a generator for my business and I don't have the money right now, and the fact is that the trend is for prices to keep going up. If I don't buy it today for let's say 1 million, in a few months' time, it might be 1.3. So it makes sense for me to actually take that pay small of one and pay the 1 million right now and then pay it over time, as long as it doesn't end up costing me 1.7 million in the process. So you have to still run your numbers. However, you're also able to draw value from that generator today that you would have had to extend to sometime in the future if you don't buy it immediately. So it depends on what you are actually taking that pay small for. But if it's to buy a ticket to travel abroad on vacation, I would say don't try it. But if it's an asset, if you are putting it into something that will give you additional value in the future that could possibly create money for you to pay back, then consider it.
All right. I guess don't take loans for consumption or pleasure at this point.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Oladele is a founder, the Money with Club, there giving us tips on how to navigate the headwinds right now.
Thank you. Bye.